Sir, I already told you. We don't have tables available for walk-ins, the waiter snapped, barely glancing up from his notepad. David Foster, dressed in a simple button-down shirt and jeans, gave the young man a calm but piercing look. I see empty tables right there, he said, gesturing toward the half-empty restaurant. The waiter rolled his eyes. Those are for paying customers. David raised an eyebrow. And you assume I'm not one? The waiter sighed dramatically, his irritation evident. Look, this is an upscale place. We don't serve just anyone who walks in. His eyes flicked over David's attire, dismissing him entirely. David took a deep breath, keeping his temper in check. If only this waiter knew who he was talking to. If only he knew that the man he was rudely turning away was none other than the owner of this very restaurant chain. But David wasn't here as the CEO tonight. He was here as a regular customer, to experience what his customers went through. And right now, he was experiencing pure disrespect. Little did this arrogant waiter know, his world was about to turn upside down. David exhaled slowly, his patience wearing thin. Is that how you treat all your customers? The waiter scoffed, tapping his pen against his notepad. Only the ones who clearly don't belong here. A few nearby diners turned to look, sensing the tension. An older couple in the corner frowned at the scene unfolding. A young woman, sitting alone by the window, shook her head in disapproval. David squared his shoulders, his voice steady. And who exactly decides who belongs? The waiter smirked. I do. And from where I'm standing, you don't. At that moment, the restaurant manager emerged from the back, his eyes scanning the dining area. Noticing the confrontation, he hurried over. Is there a problem here? The manager asked, directing his question at the waiter. David met the manager's gaze and spoke before the waiter could answer. Apparently, your staff decides who's worthy of dining here, and according to him, I'm not. The manager's face paled. I'm sorry. I'll handle this. He turned to the waiter. Jake, step aside. Sir, let me find you a table. Jake scoffed. Oh, now he gets a table? He laughed, shaking his head. Because he complained? That's ridiculous. David didn't miss the arrogance in Jake's tone, nor the entitlement in his posture. He folded his arms. You don't seem to care much about customer service, do you? Jake shrugged. I care about real customers, not... That's enough, the manager snapped, his forehead beating with sweat. He turned to David. Sir, I sincerely apologize for this. David held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. No need to apologize yet. His voice was calm, but his eyes held an intensity that made the manager swallow hard, because he knew. The moment the manager got a good look at David's face, recognition dawned on him. His breath hitched. David Foster, the owner, the CEO, the man whose signature was on his paycheck. The manager's heart pounded as realization struck like a lightning bolt. And then, the real reckoning began. The manager's face turned ashen as he struggled to find his words. His mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for air. David leaned forward slightly, his piercing gaze locked onto the waiter. Tell me, Jake, how long have you worked here? Jake scoffed, oblivious to the growing tension. Long enough to know who belongs and who doesn't. David raised an eyebrow. Is that so? The manager finally found his voice. Mr. Foster, Jake frowned, glancing between them. Wait, what did you just call him? The color drained from Jake's face as he finally put the pieces together. His smirk vanished. David sat back, watching the realization dawn. That's right, he said, his voice even but firm. I own this place. The restaurant went dead silent. The clatter of silverware, the murmur of conversation, all of it disappeared into stunned silence. Every customer within earshot stared, wide-eyed. Jake swallowed hard. I didn't know. David's eyes didn't waver. And if you had known, would you have treated me any differently? Jake had no answer. David exhaled slowly, drumming his fingers on the table. That's the problem. You think respect is something you only give to people you think are important. He shook his head. But real character is how you treat people when you don't know who they are. The manager, still pale, turned to Jake. Get to the back. Now. But David wasn't done. Number. Let him stay. Jake hesitated, his hands fidgeting. David stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. You see, I came here today because I had a feeling something was off. I've heard complaints, but I wanted to see it for myself. He turned to the manager. And now, I have. Jake stammered. I can do better. David's expression remained unreadable. No, Jake. You had every chance to do better, and you chose not to. The weight of those words crushed the last of Jake's arrogance. David looked at the manager. This isn't just about him. If this culture exists under your watch, then you're just as responsible. The manager opened his mouth, but David wasn't waiting for excuses. He turned to the customers. Ladies and gentlemen, I deeply apologize for what you just witnessed. This is not the kind of experience I expect from my establishment, and it never will be again. Then, he looked back at Jake and the manager. You're both done here. Gasps echoed through the restaurant. Jake staggered back. Wait, no, please! I need this job! The manager paled even further. Mr. Foster, David held up a hand. Save it. Security arrived within moments, escorting them both out. As the doors shut behind them, the restaurant remained eerily quiet. Then, slowly, applause broke out. David sighed and turned to the customers. Dinner's on me tonight. Cheers erupted. David shook his head, muttering under his breath. And to think, I only came here for a meal. As the restaurant buzzed with energy after the shocking turn of events, David took a moment to address the remaining staff. He scanned their faces, some nervous, others relieved. Everyone, listen up, he said, his voice carrying authority but not hostility. I don't want any of you thinking this is just about firing 2 people and moving on. This is about changing how things are done here. The assistant manager, a middle-aged woman named Carla, stepped forward cautiously. Sir, I tried to speak up before, but David gave her a reassuring nod. I appreciate that, and I want to hear from all of you now. The servers, kitchen staff, and even the host at the front exchanged glances. One brave young waiter, a man in his early 20s, raised his hand. With all due respect, sir, Jake wasn't the only one. The way he treated customers, he treated us like that too. He had favorites, and if you weren't one of them, your hours got cut. If you spoke up, you got written up for nonsense reasons. Others nodded in agreement, their expressions full of resentment that had long been bottled up. David crossed his arms. That's exactly what I needed to know. Carla exhaled sharply. We all knew it wasn't right, but she shrugged helplessly. The manager protected him. We didn't stand a chance. David gave her a thoughtful look. And yet, you stayed. Why? She swallowed hard. Because we love this restaurant. We love what it could be. And we needed the job. David nodded, appreciating the honesty. Well, let me make one thing clear. From today forward, that toxic culture ends. If anyone has concerns about management, treatment, anything, you bring it straight to me or my HR team, and there will be zero retaliation. Understood? A wave of cautious optimism spread across the staff. David turned to Carla. Effective immediately, you're the interim manager. But I don't just hand out promotions. I need to see what you're capable of. Show me that you can lead the right way. Her eyes widened in shock. Me? "You've already proven you care," David said simply. "Now prove you can make this place better." She straightened her back, determination shining through her uncertainty. "I won't let you down, sir." David offered a small smile before turning to the rest of the team. "And as for everyone else, if you're here to do good work, you have nothing to worry about. But if anyone thinks they can pick up where Jake left off, you won't last a week." No one protested. David took one last glance around the restaurant, the place he had built from the ground up. It would take time to repair the damage that had been done, but tonight was a start. "All right," he said, exhaling. "Let's get back to what we do best, serving great food." And with that, the restaurant returned to business, only this time with a fresh start. 2 months had passed since that fateful night at the restaurant. Under Carla's leadership, the place had transformed. Staff morale was higher, customer service had improved, and sales were up. The toxic energy Jake and the former manager had created was gone, replaced by a culture of fairness and respect. David visited often, keeping a close eye on the progress. One evening, as he sipped a coffee near the window, he saw a familiar figure outside, Jake. Gone was his arrogant smirk. His usual crisp uniform had been replaced with a wrinkled shirt and worn-out sneakers. His hair was unkempt, and his face carried the weight of someone who had been humbled by life. Curious, David watched as Jake hesitated near the entrance before finally stepping inside. The moment he crossed the threshold, a few of the employees noticed him and exchanged glances. Carla, now the official restaurant manager, stepped forward. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice professional but firm. Jake cleared his throat. I just wanted to ask if you guys were hiring." A few of the staff raised their eyebrows. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Carla folded her arms. "Hiring?" Jake nodded. I've been looking for a job. It's been tough. No one wants to hire me after." He gestured vaguely, clearly embarrassed. "After what happened here." David finally stood and approached, his presence making Jake visibly nervous. "You need a job?" David asked, his tone neutral. Jake swallowed. "Yeah." David studied him for a long moment before shaking his head. "You didn't just have a job, Jake. You had a chance, and you threw it away." Jake's face fell. I messed up. I know that now." David remained unimpressed. "It's not just about messing up. It's about how you treated people when you had power. And now that you have none, you suddenly care?" Jake had no response. Carla exchanged a look with David before turning back to Jake. "Maybe you've changed. Maybe you haven't. But this restaurant isn't a place for second chances for people who abuse their first one." Jake clenched his jaw, but he didn't argue. He simply gave a small nod and turned to leave. As he walked out into the cold night, David exhaled, feeling no guilt for the decision. Some lessons had to be learned the hard way. "All right, everyone," he said, turning back to his team. "Let's get back to work." And just like that, the restaurant moved forward, without Jake, but stronger than ever.